14 boss fights, 30 collectible upgrades, a custom soundtrack, and over 100 unique handcrafted rooms to explore. This is Kinbound, a game I've spent the last year and a half developing. Now, I need you to take a look at this footage and ask yourself the following. What engine do you think this game is built in? Godot? Game Maker Studio? Unity? No, this game was made in Scratch. Yes, that Scratch, the one made for absolute beginner level programming. Let me show you how I pushed Scratch to the absolute limit and made an entire Metroidvania with no coding experience. Let me get this out of the way immediately. If what you've seen so far looks even remotely interesting, I'd highly encourage you to go play through the game yourself before watching this video. Kinbound is only about 2 hours long, completely free and playable in your browser, which means you don't have to download anything. Just make sure not to run the game on Firefox. If you're interested, there's a link at the top of the description. I've spent almost 2 years on these 2 hours of gameplay, and I'd love for you to experience them for yourself. Also, if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. My email is also in the description. Alright, let's continue. I can't begin to tell you just how much I've learned over the almost 2 years it took to make this project come to life. But in this video, I'll specifically focus on what might be the most fascinating aspect of this project. The fact that I still don't know how to code. I've never done any proper programming, not a single hello world, let alone learning an actual language. And yet I'm the sole programmer behind the game you see on screen, with only the tiniest bit of online guidance. So how did I make this project come together? This is Scratch. It's a website that allows children, yes, children, to learn programming in simple, easy to grasp steps. I mean, just look at the interface, you can quite easily infer the target audience. And you know, most games on Scratch do look like this, quite simplistic. Which is exactly what made me ask the question, what's the limit? How much can Scratch actually handle? Could I use this oversimplistic game engine to make an actual game? Well, here's the advantage to Scratch. In the time it's taken me to finish this sentence, I've already programmed the movement system of the cat on screen. The code is so simple that I'm sure you can even understand it without ever having used Scratch before, which is awesome, and it's the reason I love Scratch so much as an engine. However, given just how simple Scratch is, it obviously has its limitations. And so if I wanted to create something as ambitious as a Metroidvania, that is a non-linear interconnected world with boss fights and character progression, I knew I had to overcome some pretty rough design obstacles. So let's talk about some of the absolute worst ones. First up, take a look at that cat again. Right now he's moving around on the stage, that is the area where the actual game takes place. The problem here is that this area is fixed. I cannot move outside the bounds of the stage. I can't zoom out using the mouse wheel. I can't expand the playable area. I can't even switch to another stage. Well, I can change the background texture, but any sprites, like this flagpole here, will remain on the stage no matter what, even when I change the background to a part of the level where it shouldn't be. And you know, that's no good. You can't have a Metroidvania with only one room. We need dozens. So here's what we have to do. We have to trick Scratch into thinking that we're actually moving from one room to another. I had to know whether this was even possible, so before starting on Kinbound, I designed a prototype game to test it out. This is Fratricide. Now, I'm not here to explain why such a silly looking game has such an awesome name. I'm here to show you how I solved the problem of Scratch only having a single stage. Look at what happens when I move to the edge of the screen. All of a sudden, I'm in a new room. But how? I just told you this wasn't possible. Well, technically, these aren't separate rooms, they're tricks. See, when our character moves to the edge of the screen, a piece of logic simulates moving into a new room by doing the following. First, it changes the coordinate variables of the world x and y. This is extremely simple. Going to the right increases x by 1, while going to the left decreases x by 1. Going up and down similarly increases and decreases the y value, just like in a coordinate system. This is to keep track of where we are in the world. So basically every room is defined by an X and a Y value. You could place all the rooms in a large grid and it would look something like this. So let's say we go to the right. First, X is increased by 1. Then the game sends out a message to every object in the game containing the new world coordinates. It's yelling out, "Hey guys, we're now entering X equals 1, Y equals 0. The reason we do this is to simulate a theater where as soon as Act 1 begins, all the actors know whether they're supposed to be in the scene or not. The playable area is called the stage after all. So when I walk from this first room, 0-0, to the room on the right, 1-0, these crushers, this enemy and this pink man at the top all know to show themselves because they're meant to be on scene 1-0. And when I walk back again, they're no longer allowed to be on stage and will have to hide themselves. Finally, all I do is change the background to fit the current scene. This is easy because all the backgrounds are named after their respective room coordinates, and then I teleport the player to the opposite side of the stage from where he currently is. And there you go, we've officially simulated the player traveling to a new room by changing the background, mixing up which sprites are visible, and teleporting the player to the opposite side of the screen. So even though this game doesn't look very polished, it served as a stepping stone for me to be able to create the exploration in Kinbound. Because guess what? Kinbound uses this very exact system, and it works wonderfully. Now, the other huge design obstacles I had to overcome were gravity and bounding boxes. And they didn't work out as wonderfully when I first put them into fratricide. I mean, just look at this. If I just drive up to the wall with my character and jump, I'll start to fall through the floor. That's no good. So this is the only time in the Kinbound project where I had to look up a very specific solution to my problem. I used this video by Griffpatch to implement a proper collision system, and I'm glad I did because it's a very well-designed system. Now, you may have been wondering why all of the ground, walls and ceilings in Fratricide were pitch black. I mean, maybe not, but that's actually because I was using the color black to indicate solid matter, not just to the player, but actually to the game itself. However, that wasn't really going to work for Kinbound. Luckily for me, there was another solution. This is a fenced-off area you can cross later in the game. You could imagine that walking through the fence isn't possible, and it's not. But why not? What's telling my character that he can't move through the fence? Well, simple. It's this sprite right here, Hit World. You can't see it right now because it's invisible, so let me fix that. And bam! That black overlay is what's stopping my character from moving wherever he pleases, or falling through the floor for that matter. The fence is off limits, there's some elevated ground to walk on, and if we found a way to shrink our hitbox, it looks like we could actually go through the log. That's the power of this system. I can draw whatever room I want and then add a hitbox afterwards, telling the player exactly where he's allowed to go. It's really quite a miracle that such simple yet extremely flexible collision detection is possible in Scratch. It's starting to feel like the only limit is our imagination. When it comes to all the cool things I could talk about in regard to this project, I've only been scratching the surface. So if you'd like to hear me discuss other parts of the design process, for example, how I removed almost all elements of randomness from Kinbound and whether or not that made for a better or worse experience, please tell me down below in the comments. And if you're considering subscribing, you should do it while watching this video, as YouTube will then tell me that you're specifically interested in more Kinbound. Thank you so much. Anyway, I've now managed to solve the two biggest development issues, making an open world and implementing proper collision, and Kinbound is slowly starting to come together. The last really big obstacle was designing a game that people would actually want to play. Kinbound was, in large part, inspired by Hollow Knight. When I first played Hollow Knight, I almost instantly fell in love with the non-linear open world, the boss fights, the upgrades and abilities, and so when I started working on Kinbound, I knew I wanted to implement a lot of those same elements, but I also wanted to give my game a twist. Here's the twist. Your character is a pacifist. Well, for the most part. Unlike so many other video game protagonists, Dmitry Golovin does not solve his problems with violence. Rather, he finds clever ways to outlast his opponents until they collapse from exhaustion. And, well, I could spend a whole other video talking about just how successful this twist was, but for now, we have to move on. You just have to play the game for yourself if you want to find out whether it actually made for a fun experience. In Kinbound, your goal is to find and rescue your father, Isaac, who has been captured by an unknown party. On your way, you'll encounter resistance from many wicked creatures and even your own brother before you can finally venture inside the bunker and attempt to free your father. Alright, so here's the gameplay loop. You explore, find new abilities, fight bosses, explore, find coins, which you can use in the bazaar to purchase more upgrades, then you explore, you fight bosses, etc. Well, it's far from perfect, but it's pretty fun, if you ask me. So I would say, despite many flaws, the overall game experience was quite successful. When I was developing Kinbound, I had a little bit of outside help. My father wrote 4 pieces of music for the game, I had a visual artist design 3 of the bosses, and I got my amazing brothers and even my mother to do some voice acting. However, I still had to face what I assume every solo developer goes through, the realization of just how many different kinds of design go into making a proper game. In addition to designing the experience and implementing the actual scratch code, I had to write even more music for the game, design and draw the entire world, design and animate all the bosses and the player character and every NPC, implement sound design. Gosh, I hate sound design. And if there weren't something new to be implemented, which there always was, there was something old to be re-implemented. Boss themes were scrapped and rewritten, entire areas had multiple redesigns, fights were given full reworks, and at some point I just had to say stop. Stop making new crap, stop redesigning the old pixel art, just get the dang thing finished. So over the last couple of weeks I've been working 10 to 12 hour days, finishing up the music, polishing the last few rooms, and playtesting the game again and again and again. And finally, I'm ready to hand it over to you. It's been over 2 years since I designed Fratricide and almost as long since I started working on Kinbound. The game is out now on itch.io and it's a pretty cool experience to have finished what almost feels like a proper game. Now, I'm under no delusion that Kinbound is a great or even a good game. I think it's a fun experience and honestly, I still recommend that you click the link in the description and try it out for yourself if you haven't. Again, it's completely free, but I still have so much more to learn about game design, and in many ways, Kinbound is nothing more than a glorified Fratricide, a prototype. And that's okay with me. I'll have a bit more to say after the outro, but for now, I really appreciate you sticking all the way through. Subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching. I'm still actively working on polishing Kinbound, so if you have any bug fixes or suggestions, feel free to send me an email or write a comment down below. Any civilly expressed critical feedback is also very much appreciated. Whether or not I make any more videos on Kinbound will depend on how many people enjoy this one, but in any case, I will be returning to posting videos about Hollow Knight shortly. So if that's what you're here for, don't worry. But that's all for now. Let me know down below if you want to see more Kinbound, and have a wonderful day. Bye!